Will Hoy, championship leader, makes a bad start, but John Cleland, a superb start from the second row of the grid to take a lead, followed by his teammate Jeff Allen, the two leading positions which never change. John Cleland comes out of the chicane for the last time at Thruxton to take the checkered flag. Now, will that super start by Cleland be repeated?
Everyone knows now that I can pull a good start. The problem is, this will be the one day that I can't get a good start and I'll probably end up 10th after the first lap or something. I think around here we've only got just over a minute per lap. It's very close. We're split by fractions of seconds. And to be held up for the first lap, say, by, say, a couple of cars in front, I know that I can run faster than I have done in practice. I know I should be somewhere near the front of the grid. Unfortunately, if I get balked at the start, then it's going to take me too long to fight there. And by that time, maybe Will and maybe Tim Sugden, maybe even my own teammate could get away. That's not what I want.
What's the key to making a good start? Is this something you really work on?
Luck.
Is that all it is?
No, last year I could never get it off the grid, and I was giving it far too many revs, and then I would go the other way and I'd not give it enough revs, and it would bog down, and I'd have to dip the clutch to start again. And now I just seem to have got somewhere in the last 4 races where I've got the start just perfectly right. I don't weave and heat the tyres up on the warm-up lap or the green flag lap now, because I've found that was maybe blistering, helping to put too much heat in them. So I gently do that in the warm-up, and that I think is also part of the key to getting a good start. We'll see today.
But Cleland's going to need all his expertise because he's down in 6th place on the grid. But on the front row is championship leader Will Hoy.
So last round at Thruxton with the Vauxhall 1-2, what kind of a blow to morale was that?
It's a personal blow, really, because I messed up the start and then I missed the gear. When I'd caught them up after 5 laps, I got onto their bumper and I missed the gear, and I was in a great position to attack them. And then I had to do it all again. By the time I got up to them again, I had nothing left in the tyres. So it was a personal blow, really, because I felt I'd let down the team and myself, you know. But because I'm fairly competitive, well, very competitive, so I felt that I could have done a lot better.
The start does seem to be crucial. John Cleland got a flyer at Thruxton. What were your problems off the start line?
Well, they told us in the pre-race talk that they were going to put the 5-second board up, and then immediately the board came down, the red light would come on. Well, there was about a 6 or 7 second delay before the red light went on after the 5-second board had come down, and I was so eager, I was over eager. As soon as the red light came on, I actually then moved, and of course the delay was too long. It's entirely my own fault.
So what's the position going to be today? What's the approach off the start line going to be?
Oh, just like I did last time at Silverstone, which I was first into Cops, I think, so I shall do the same, hopefully.
But beside him on the front row in pole position, not Jonathan Palmer's BMW in the foreground, but that of the young charger, Tim Sugden.
I think a lot of the people in practice were tending to overdrive. There was some oil down initially, so obviously I realised that I'd have the best out of my tyres in the first couple of laps, and I wasn't going to set a good time if there was oil down. So I came back in the pits and sat there for a couple of laps until they'd let most of the oil go, then went out and did a time that was good enough for pole at the time. Then I think Will went a little bit quicker, so I came in, put the other 2 tyres on the outside and went out and managed to get pole back. It went very well, I was pleased. I don't particularly want it to rain, I must admit, because I haven't done any driving in the car in the wet, but if it's dry then it's down to making a good start, and the rest have got to beat me, put it that way.
But unfortunately for Tim Sugden, drizzle falling on the track at the start of the race, and some teams making the decision to opt for wet tyres. The wet weather board goes up. That means that any tyre changes made after the start have to be made in race time. Now, teams opting for wet tyres, the Yokohama runner, Gary Ailes. Now, his teammate Andy Rouse has remained on slick tyres, so they're hedging the bets. Andy Middlehurst in the Graham Good Racing Sierra, he's going on to wet weather tyres, as is the veteran Frank Sittner in the black BMW, down in 10th place on the grid. And some of the teams electing to keep the wet weather tyres on the trolleys as the green flag is prepared for the warm-up lap. This will be critical on this track. It's not soaking wet, it's just slightly damp as a result of the drizzle, and many of the cars on the slick tyres, they're going to be desperately trying to get temperature into the tyre treads. And in car now with Tim Harvey. Now Harvey's opted for the harder slick compound tyres. He's back in 9th place on the starting grid. Ahead of him though we've got the Toyota of Gary Ailes, the Sierra of Andy Middlehurst. They're on the softer compound treaded wet weather tyres. Now, they've got to get these tyre treads up to 75 or 80 degrees, otherwise they just don't develop any grip at all. But the guys on the treaded wet weather tyres, if their tyre temperatures go up above 95 degrees, the rubber literally boils off the tread of the tyre and they're not going to be able to survive the race. But you can see the cars already slipping and sliding on that warm-up lap. There's Frank Sittner in the black BMW. He also has elected to run on those wet weather tyres. Rob Gravett there in the Shell Team Trackstar Sierra. He's running on slicks. But again, frantically weaving down the straights. You can see that Frank Sittner there on the treaded tyres just running in a straight line. He's trying to keep his temperatures down. Everyone else trying to get the temperatures up. And you can see how slippery it is on the warm-up lap. Tim Sugden hanging the tail out at very low speed on untreaded tyres on a damp track. So through the new complex of the Silverstone National circuit, through Luffield Corner and then into the famous Woodcote Corner and up to the start line. Now bear in mind the Pirelli runners, the ProDrive BMWs and the Dunlop runners, that's the Nissan Primera of Keith O'Dore, and the Vauxhall Cavaliers have all elected to stay on untreaded, hard compound, slick tyres. So Tim Sugden lines up on pole position, Will Hoy next to him. Outside of the second row going into position there was Ray Belm, Jeff Allam on the inside. Behind them, Jonathan Palmer, then John Cleland, 6th place on the grid, followed by Andy Rouse, Andy Middlehurst on wets, Tim Harvey on slicks, Gary Ailes on wets, Lawrence Bristow on slicks, Frank Sittner on wets, and all the other cars on slick tyres. Ian Flux, Nick Whale, Rob Gravett, Keith O'Dore, Ian Forrest, Nick Baird, and a non-starter at the back of the grid, Mark Hales in the Mitsubishi. And the lights go to green, and it's Will Hoy makes a superstart. Tim Sugden gets a little delayed. Jeff Allam charges through from second row of the grid. He's already alongside Ray Belm's BMW, and going into Copse Corner, it is Will Hoy, the championship leader, with John Cleland moving up to third place at the expense of Ray Belm. Second place man there, Jeff Allam in the Vauxhall. And the field streamed through. Bear in mind these cars are still on a damp track. They're hoping that the cars running across the track will dry the racing line out. Will Hoy slipping and sliding into Beckett's Corner with the two Vauxhalls literally clamped to his back bumper, and Jeff Allam trying to take a look down the inside. Meanwhile, we've got a spinner there. That's Ian Flux's BMW. He made contact with Rob Gravett, and also Lawrence Bristow was delayed there, so Bristow dropped right to the back of the field through no fault of his own. But out at the front of the field, we've got this tremendous battle between Jeff Allam and Will Hoy, with John Cleland playing the waiting game in third place. He's waiting just in case there's a mistake. But it looks as if Will Hoy's got it firmly under his control at the moment. Jeff Allam charging hard there. It'll be interesting to watch the difference in handling characteristics on these slick tyres between Will Hoy in the BMW with rear-wheel drive and the two Vauxhalls, of course, with front-wheel drive. So flat out in sixth gear, 140 miles an hour on damp track, on slick tyres, going into Copse Corner, and John Cleland moves up. Cleland up to second place, Jeff Allam now tucked into third, but Will Hoy still firmly out in front with his teammate Ray Belm in fourth. But very heavy frontal damage on Gravett's car. That, I surmise, is as a result of his contact with Ian Flux on the opening lap. And Nick Whale's BMW coming into the pits there, a punctured right front tyre. So Nick Whale perhaps also involved in one of those incidents on the opening lap. But as we come through to end lap 2, this is Will Hoy still in the lead. John Cleland second place, Jeff Allam third, fourth place Ray Belm, and then we've got the battle between the two Toyotas. Gary Ailes had initially made the better start, but Andy Rouse on his slick tyres. You can see the track starting to dry out. Gary Ailes starting to slip back down the field. He'll be trying to preserve his wet weather tyres, a softer rubber compound. They're not going to go the distance on a dry track. Behind Gary Ailes there, a brief glimpse of Tim Sugden. He's running right back now in 7th place. Sugden obviously not quite happy in these conditions, never had driven the BMW on a wet track before, but Will Hoy running very wide there at Copse Corner. Hoy had to back off a little bit there and into maggots. John Cleland closing all the time. Cleland still clamped on the back bumper of the Omega BMW. You can see Cleland's car there sliding, the tail hanging out. Will Hoy running a little bit wide onto the club straight. and in car with Hoy. It's a straight power game. You can see Cleland up alongside the right-hand wing of the BMW, passing the 150-yard marker, and he's still accelerating. It's the last of the late breakers, Will Hoy, who stays in the lead. But look at those clouds across the back of the Silverstone circuit. Black clouds threatening. It may well be these guys who are running on slicks may have made the wrong decision. The men on wets who are currently dropping back down the field may still yet have their moment of glory. But in car with Cleland onto Woodcote Corner, flat out through third, fourth, fifth and into sixth gears, approaching 140 miles an hour down the main straight, past the press centre, past the pits at Silverstone. And Will Hoy, you can see him moving slightly to the right there, partly to block John Cleland's line for getting down the inside into Copse. No need to this time. Cleland's decided to let discretion be the better part of valour, but perhaps not. Going into Maggots Corner, Cleland is up alongside Will Hoy. Cleland going round the outside of Maggots. He's got through into the lead. Will Hoy still in second place, and he's hit from behind. Yes, and Jeff Allen's Vauxhall Cavalier. But what a recovery by Will Hoy. The car never actually stopped moving. He's dropped down to fourth place. We've seen Ray Belm go through there. Will Hoy will be absolutely furious about that, and look at the damage on the front of Allen's Cavalier. So it's Cleland, Allen, Ray Belm, then Will Hoy trailing some tyre smokers, Andy Rouse and Gary Ailes Gain. And we can see there the damage to the front of Will Hoy's car as a result of that impact from Jeff Allen. I suspect that was the second impact, once he was already spinning. Meanwhile, we look back at an action replay. You can see John Cleland charges through it into the braking area for Beckett's. There's Allen, nudges him out of the way, then the heavy contact. That's what's done the damage to both the cars, but it's John Cleland currently leading. So, crossing the line, Vauxhall Cavaliers 1-2, as they were at Thruxton. But the clouds in the background getting heavier and heavier. You can see there the black clouds. But out at the front, you can see Jeff Allen's wiper going too. Yes, the rain is now coming down in sheets. Look at Cleland pointing at the screen, saying, just look at that rain. You can see the rain falling heavier and heavier. Now this is going to really mean a reshuffle of the field. John Cleland still leading, Jeff Allen in second place. Third place is Ray Belm, fourth place Will Hoy. They're coming up to lap. Rob Gravitt's damaged Ford Sierra. Gravitt damaged the car on the second corner of the race on the opening lap. But as this rain begins to fall, the cars will be able to keep the racing line of the track a little bit drier in the early stages. Meanwhile, Will Hoy charges through to take Ray Belm. Ray Belm really there, I think, moved offline to let Hoy through, let him keep his championship chances. But it also means that Will Hoy is now having to charge on slick tyres. All these front-running cars running on the untreaded tyres. As you can see, the track now getting wetter and wetter. With rainfall like that, there is absolutely no chance of the drying line remaining on the track. So these drivers are now having to drive on a soaking track in heavy rain on untreaded tyres. So 1-2, the two Vauxhall Cavaliers, and then Will Hoy, Ray Belm, and look at Andy Rouse closing on Ray Belm. You can see how difficult it is. Rob Gravitt's car not handling very well as a result of its accident, but it's taken John Cleland over half a lap to find a way past him. Jeff Allen also now trying to find a way past Gravitt. Yes, he's through. You can see Gravitt's car struggling there, trying to turn in without the benefit of the aerodynamics from its front spoiler. Meanwhile, Ian Forrest, they're getting very sideways indeed. And Nick Baird alongside him, the two cars really now struggling. Forrest gets it on the curbs, he gets it sideways. Nick Baird gets it completely wrong, winds up going in and out of the pit lane. You can just see how slippery the track has become. All these drivers, of course, driving now on sheets of water on untreaded tyres. So you can imagine just what it's like. On the road, if you have less than a millimetre of tread on your tyre, you're in serious trouble. On the track, on untreaded tyres there, Jeff Allen is in even greater trouble. It's a terrific example of just how difficult it is. The cars are now aquaplaning round the track, probably still reaching speeds of 60 or 70 miles an hour. Certainly the decision's been made in the Vauxhall pits. They look as if they're going to call the leaders in for a tyre change. You can see the Dunlop wets there. Meanwhile, Rob Gravitt's already made that decision. Lawrence Bristow getting it very sideways, but look at Gary Ailes and Andy Middlehurst charging back up through the field. Gary Ailes there. Lawrence Bristow understeering wide, so's Keith Odor. Odor escapes the gravel track, but sadly for Lawrence Bristow, it looks as if his race is definitely run. The car embedded in the gravel at the outside of Luffield. Drivers now making the decision to come in for wet weather tyres. Keith Odor's coming in the Nissan. That's Jonathan Palmer in the Works BMW. He's coming in for wet weather tyres also. Still staying out on the track though, splashing round at the moment. In the lead, it's John Cleland, it's Jeff Allen, and then Will Hoy closing up all the time. Hoy really flying now on his slick tyres. Meanwhile, Palmer's into the pits. Safety pins out of the locking wheel nuts. The air guns go in. The automatic jacks raise the car up, and the wet weather Pirelli's going onto the car. Meanwhile, Cleland's in trouble. Cleland straight off, as was Jeff Allen there at Brooklands Corner. Cleland straight off and across the gravel trap. Also, Jeff Allen, he was in second place. He's also gone down the escape road. And almost a head-on collision there with Ray Belm's BMW. Belm charging right into the Silverstone infield. The conditions now absolutely crazy. Here's Tim Harvey. He's gone down the escape road too. And Harvey has gone so far across the infield, he's actually found himself at the entrance to the pits lane. Frantically waving, Marshall says, following Nick Baird. So Harvey taking a little bit of a shortcut into the pit lane there. Meanwhile, Frank Sidner, now don't forget Frank Sidner on wet weather tyres. He's charged past, he's taken the lead. Will Hoy and Andy Rouse were 1-2 as we see in Forest in the pits. Andy Rouse, Will Hoy now demoted to second and third places. A charging veteran Frank Sidner, his decision to go on the Yokohama wets was the right one. Tim Harvey had his tyre change, he's on his way back out of the pit lane. And Harvey stopped at the end of the pit lane. You can see the red light on just below his rear view mirror there. They've actually stopped cars leaving the pit lane. I suspect that means that red flags are being waved. The track conditions are absolutely treacherous, except for Frank Sidner. He's on the correct tyres for the conditions. Soft rubber, heavily treaded, the wet weather Yokohama racing tyres obviously working well. Frank, one of the few men to make that gamble. Don't forget that, yes, you can see now the red flags being waved at Lovefield, the red flag being waved at Brooklands Corner here. Sidner still charging. Now bear in mind, one of the other difficulties of racing in these conditions is actually the cars steaming up inside and not being able to see it. So I should think Sidner will be now hoping that if he's seen the red flag, the drivers behind him, which is Gary Ailes also on the wet weather tyres, they've charged through the field 1-2. He'll be hoping that they can be able to make a safe stop on the finish line. Yes, the car's now slowing, so it is Sidner and Ailes, the first men onto the finish line. Meanwhile, coming to the pits, that's the Listerine BMW of Ray Belm. He's having a discussion with team manager Vic Lee there as they put the wet weather tyres on, and the cars reforming on the starting grid. They'll be awaiting the instructions of the clerk of the course. But meanwhile, we see John Cleland's incident. The car literally just aquaplanes straight on, flies over the gravel trap and straight into the barriers, and you saw Jeff Allen charge through. He missed the barriers, but only by inches. Now we're in car with John Cleland. You can see how treacherous the conditions are. You can see the steering wheel there frantically moving on the right-hand side of the screen. Cleland's arm right across, the car just goes straight on, crosses the gravel trap and straight into the barriers. Cleland, though, definitely out of the running.
I believe there were 2 or 3 cars starting on wets. To be fair, at the start of this race, it did look like a dry one. But this place, you can never tell. The winds were so strong, it obviously blew a fair old rainstorm in here.
And Frank Sidner now in the pit lane. The cars have been directed in off the starting grid, and it's supposed to be Parc Fermé situation, but you can see the teams down the pit lane still fitting wet weather tyres to their cars.
If we get disqualified, that's our problem.
You can hear now the contention in the pit lane. Pyramid Motorsport, Frank Sidner's team there, obviously very upset about what is going on.
Let's just come in now. They're saying we can't change the tyres because it's Parc Fermé situation, but one official's walked down the pit road and told us all we can do is change the tyres.
What's going on is that we took a risk. We went on to wets, which was okay, reasonable at the beginning, and became, of course, the answer about 4 or 5 laps ago. Got into the lead, pulled out a lead. They've stopped the race. A bit of confusion back there. Nobody seems to know what to do. We know the rules. You're not allowed to touch the car. And virtually every car in the pit lane, we've seen them come in and they've changed onto wets, which is definitely not honest.
The rules say that you're allowed into the pit lane to change tyres, but if you work on the car or repair the car, you then have to start from the back of the grid. Frank Sidner had passed me a few yards from the line, and Gary also. I'd already passed Will Hoy, so I actually was third, I think, at that stage. But floating along, that's just running on slicks with absolutely no grip. You know, it was really bad. It's a good job they stopped it.
Just unfortunate that they stopped it.
What, you were on wets, were you?
I started on wets, that's why we slowly went progressively backwards and backwards. Then it started raining again. I started making places again, and it was perfect. And I thought, well, if it carries on like this, we're all, you know, on the rostrum. Yeah, no, I was happy.
Was that a personal choice or a team decision?
No, a personal choice. Yeah, I don't know why, I just thought that's the way to go. And I looked at the clouds and thought, well, we'll go that way.
So where were you lying when they stopped the race?
Second. Yeah, second. Yeah. From 10th to 2nd, I thought it was a bit of a result, really.
And an amazing sight, John Cleland, Jeff Allen being taken by the stewards to the victory rostrum, the race being stopped at the end of lap 10.
For taking the decision. The race was declared as a race, and the result stands for the 10th lap.
Why 10th?
Because it was a lap after the red flag, the lap before the red flag came in.
I also thought that the race had to go 2/3 distance to be a race.
No, it's actually 50% distance, but they've declared force majeure because of a dangerous condition.
What dangerous condition?
And I think Frank Sittner's confusion there matched by many of the other competitors as Cleland was given victory from Allen and Hoy, with Sittner down in 6th place.
I don't like winning races under controversy, and I think this is going to be one of the most controversial races this year. I don't like to win races when you don't actually cross the line and take the flag. The only problem with that is, rules are rules. It was deemed a wet race at the start. We had the choice to go wets or dries. Everyone bar, I think 3 people, chose the slick route, which looked on the weather situation now as being the correct way to go. The only thing was, it was very, very dangerous, and if I was maybe just the first of many, there were lots of people spun. I was the one to collect the barriers. I feel sorry for the people who started on wets, because they were then going to come through as the race progressed. But a win's a win. We need the points, and that's that.